click those too.
Again, it is Thursday, March the 9th, 2023, at approximately 3:30 p.m. My name is Cheyenne Johnson, and I am the Vice Co-Chair for the 2023 Redistricting Committee. At this time, I call the committee to order. May I have a roll call, please, Ms. Ivy Johnson.
Nope. Your mic on?
Present.
Kermit Moore,
Present.
Dr. Warren,
Present.
Vice Co-Chair Johnson.
Present. Thank you. Do we have enough for a quorum to continue before I proceed? Or do we need a quorum for committee?
It's a committee meeting. So you
Okay,
can
we do
proceed.
not need a quorum. Thank you for that verification. Okay, opening remarks. Your chair is not able to be here for personal reasons, so I've been asked to serve in her capacity. We understand the purpose of this committee is to identify ways or means by which we may be redrawing or districting the various precincts or geographical areas here in the city of Memphis for the future elections. So let's begin again with the process. We've had several committees that have been created, and we will hear from those committees today. So the first subcommittee I'd like to hear from is a communications update. Is there anyone here from communications to give us an update?
I can speak to that.
Okay, please identify yourself and name again.
Yes.
Yeah, Jonathan, is a couple levels up?
I'm Ian Randolph.
Wait a minute. Is it working? Yeah, but
Just bring it close to your face.
I'm Ian Randolph. And I'm also on the Communications Committee. We've met one time so far, and we talked about doing community meetings. Once we get the information from the MAP committee, we'll have a meeting planned for Monday. Hopefully the announcement will go out in time so we can meet. And at that time, that'll be after the next mapping committee meeting. So we'll develop a schedule, if you will, of when we would like to have one or two public meetings about the redistricting. So by the time we meet again, we should have some dates.
thank you so much for that update. Is there anything right now that you know that this committee needs to help you with collectively?
I know during the last meeting that the MAP committee had, they requested that some information be put on the website. I believe it's the current maps that are available to be viewed, maybe a place where citizens can access a redistricting tool, things like that. I'm not aware if that has been done yet. It was supposed to have been completed by Monday. And if it has been done, then the Communications Committee will look at how to market that particular part of the website.
Okay, thank you. I do believe we have a staff member here that can give us some additional insight on that particular concern you addressed. Ms. Ella.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I did receive a request to add the meeting notices to our website and the agendas. I believe at the last mapping subcommittee, they were talking about putting additional information on the redistricting website, such as census data and other maps and tools for the public to use. And they were supposed to send that to our office, but I didn't actually get the request. So that's very easy and quick to do. We just need someone to tell us what they'd like.
Okay, can you be responsible providing that information for exactly what you're asking for? Are you asking for maps, or are you asking for a comment? It looked like she mentioned other things other than maps in her comments.
Yeah,
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Point of information, I think Mr. Randolph is going to communicate what's on there once it's put there, and the MAP committee was supposed to be the one that requested those things that he mentioned to be on the maps. We don't have anyone from the map committee here, do
Got
we?
one person here, you got one, okay.
Okay, then perhaps you could come up and tell us what you'd like to be put on, and then Ms. Crichton can get that.
Please identify yourself again.
It is Mike.
Okay.
We're ready. We're ready.
Oh, y'all can hear me now? Okay. Derek D. Harris, a member of the subcommittee, the mapping subcommittee. A question came up in the meeting about putting more resources out for the public. It wasn't necessarily something that the mapping committee needed. And I'm prepared to get that. It was just some public sites where if there were members of the public that wanted to try their own hand at drawing maps, they could go to these sites and use some of those tools. The other information, I believe, the census data is already on the City of Memphis's website, along with a bunch of mapping information. So some of that stuff is already there. I think the question that came up at the last meeting was, I guess, ease of use, for lack of a better phrase, for people to be able to find it, because it's kind of down in there. You got to know what you're looking for. But other than that, I think, it's pretty straightforward. Also, I had some homework that I didn't turn in, which would have been the slideshow that we started with last week. But I wanted to include some other information because there was some question, which I have included today. And what I'll do is when we complete this, I've already sent the PowerPoint to Jonathan. So that'll cover my homework, so to speak.
Yes, Councilman Warren.
I think maybe then, based on what Mr. Harris was just saying, we just need to put links on the mapping site that go to those places in the cities, I guess, information sources that make it easy for people to find it. Because you say it's buried in there. You were able to find it, but the average citizen probably couldn't get in there and find it. So if we have on our committee, map committee website, those links.
Okay. And you're going to provide that for the office of staff, for sure?
So other than the PowerPoint, that information is already there. It's just buried down in there. And so I think the question came up, could we just create a link on the front page of the redistricting page that takes folks directly to the links to the information? Right now, you go from that to something else to another page where the information is.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Ann, is that addressing your concern, you believe? Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you. All right, we have how soon can we get that information, Mr. Harris, so we can put it out there?
So as I said before, Councilwoman, the information is there. I think we'll just have to get with either communications and or the website folks here at the city and just tell them to move the links up, so to speak. The information is there. Other than this PowerPoint I'm about to show, everything else is already there for the most part. So all that data that people was asking for, I think it wasn't the question that the data didn't exist, but it's buried down in there. So if you go to the city's website and if you go to redistricting, there's another page you go to, and then the information is below that. I think the question was, can we just put a link on the redistricting page that takes you directly to the mapping information?
So are you saying that link currently exists?
No.
So how soon can you get that
So
information
that would come from
to us?
that would come from the city's IT and web folks.
Okay, let's back up. What I'm asking is, who's going to provide that link information?
Oh, I can provide that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Will you?
Yes,
you're
I
the
will. I will. I'm
responsible
sorry.
party
I didn't understand
to
the question. I
provide
apologize.
that information so we can put it out there.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
what we're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right. We've heard from the communications. Can we get an update from the mapping committee at this time? See, you're the only one, Dr. Harris.
Yeah,
I guess
I'm
you
trying to
could go
catch my
forward.
breath here. So I have a brief presentation. What I wanted to do is bring to the committee what we presented the other night at our meeting, but also there were some questions that came up as a result of the information that was presented. I went back and I did some more work, and I'd like to present that today to this body.
Okay, you may proceed.
know how this is going to look up on there. Is this on? Yeah, you might want to turn the lights down a little bit. So what I'm going to present we had a meeting last week, so let's go back a little bit. We had a meeting to determine a way to look at mapping a little differently and to present some information to the group. So I drew up a few maps to start off with, and I sort of explained the rationale behind it. So what I did was, after that meeting, some questions came up about, well, what about this, and let's try this, and let's look at this. So I tried to cover most of those questions, but I haven't had a whole lot of time, so I tried to do as much as I could. So I'll go through this. All right, so this is the 22 city council map. So I'll probably be referring back to this as we go through this. So what I'm going to present is just some proposals or some ideas, some new things or a different way of looking at the way the districts are drawn. I started out by showing them the precinct shapes. When we're looking at spatial data, oftentimes it can be extremely misleading if you're somebody from the public that's working on mapping. And our mission was to try to give as much information to the public as possible. And once the public started to do this, particularly if they haven't worked in this realm before, they would run into immediate problems trying to do this. So I opened up by talking about the precinct shapes of Memphis. And as you can see, you got all kinds of shapes going on, but the spatial data can be extremely misleading in that there might be a small geographical area here that packs a real punch in terms of population, and there may be a big area over here that looks like there would be a lot of people there, but it's probably more land than people. So I wanted them to know that right off the bat. Then I wanted them to also take a look at what the populations were. Now, because this is in PowerPoint, some of the scaling, so you're missing some of these numbers. They're there, but because of scaling, you can't see all of it. But I wanted them to see the population numbers within these precincts, which are the building blocks for, or one way to look at building blocks for a redistricting plan or map. This was the proposal I showed last week, where I basically said, let's just throw out everything that we know and that we've done in the past and just take another look at the maps from a different way. As we know, people don't live in chunks of 90,443, and that is the target population size for a district for the city, at least for a single member district. And I said, well, let's just go north to south, west to east, and see what it looks like. So obviously these don't look like the current council maps, but this is an attempt to just go north and south and what that would look like. So this would be an imaginary District 1. So I wanted to caution current members before y'all throw me out. This is just a concept. So if we go north to south, this would be District 1, and I'll talk about some of the precinct information within it. This would be a District 2. This would be a District 3. This would be District 4. If you notice, I'm going north to south, sort of, and then east, west to east. This would be District 4. This would be District 5. This would be District 6, and this would be District 7. And let me just explain what this would do. First, District 1 would basically run down, and this sort of is shaped like, I think the state Senate map is similar to this. I basically said, hey, let's just start with a blank sheet of paper and go north to south, west to east. So you would end up combining north and south areas within Memphis. There's always a question about a consolidated Whitehaven. What could we do, and is it possible to consolidate Whitehaven? I think in the past they said we couldn't do it. Well, it is done here. This is what would be considered Mitchell Sub and all of Whitehaven combined into one district. Now, unfortunately, when you do this, you end up, and I'll show you that in just a second, you end up with two people in the same district. So again, this is just concept. This would be what part of the old District 4 used to be, running north to south, which would be sort of a mid-south district. So I'm kind of going like, you know, western, midwestern, northeast sort of thing I'm doing here, and then a central. And this would be sort of a central south. And here, this would be a reconstituted southeast east district. Again, a different way of looking at it. What I'm attempting to do here is, when you see most maps, you typically see a lot of geography spread all over the place. That's not necessarily always nefarious and necessarily a gerrymander. A lot of times that is to pick up population. But in this exercise, and most of the maps that I've been working on, and this is what I worked on with the county as well, how do we bring communities together more? Now, obviously, north and south, that's a tough sell to say bringing communities together, but this has more to do with population and actually bringing people together. But if you look at other areas, we really try to do attempt. Now, this district here, I believe, is Rhonda Logan's district. It kind of, the current district snakes all the way over here and snakes out there. What if we just tried to put them as much of a geographic area together as possible? It is possible to do that and have proportionality, and I'll show you that in just a minute. And so that's what we did here. We tried to put as many communities back together, Whitehaven, and this is the north-south Memphis. This would be a kind of a south-central and a southeast. And for the first time, the eastern part or the Hickory Hill area would actually have a district. So I'm always looking for ways to kind of bring communities together. And then obviously up here, this would be considered Cordova proper for the most part. After having that discussion, that was sort of a radical plan. And this is the same plan. Somebody asked about putting legends on. Right now, what we're just attempting to do is just give information. But I went ahead and put legends on so that council members could actually see what the impact is in terms of the actual current members of the council. Now, we're not required by law to draw the map to keep members in their prospective districts. However, that's a good redistricting policy. You don't want to draw people out of their districts unnecessarily. And this is just the data that sort of backs up the plan and kind of shows what the target populations are and what the variances are. 90,443. And let me reiterate, people don't live in chunks of 90,443. So that's what makes this extremely difficult. And also the shapes of the precincts preclude you from being able to do a lot of things to keep your community together as well. But we would achieve this in this first map to get a 7% population variance. And legally, we want to stay around that 10%, 5 up, 5 down. And even with the shapes being as radical, at least compared to the current maps, we do achieve that. And I believe the current city council map has a population deviation of 8%, I believe. I have to go back and double check that. Here's another plan. So after that meeting, that's what I showed last week. After that meeting, I thought about going back, taking another look at it and seeing what can we do to try to keep some of the communities or districts that are already existing together in their current form as much as possible and still make some changes. And this is what I call CC Single Plan 2. It, for the most part, keeps what's District 7 now similar to what it is today with the exception of a few precincts. But it does keep most of what is currently Rhonda Logan's on this side of the expressway, for lack of a better phrase. Again, trying to keep as many communities of interest together as possible. That can be done in proportionality. I know we're often told that you can't do that. There's a lot of reasons why districts are drawn that way other than the legality and population. But here we're showing you can do that and meet the one man, one vote population and other standards you want to meet as well, and I'll talk about shortly. So this is Single Plan 2. Yes.
Looking for every council person, what happened to Chase in your situation here?
So, as I said earlier, when y'all put these in PowerPoint, some of we lost some scale.
Oh, okay.
And that came up in the other meeting too, because somebody said, well, where's my council person? They're not showing on here. What are you doing? So if you scale this out, and I do have a PDF of these that says scale, you'll see everybody fall back on there. They're there. It's just when you bring it into a PowerPoint, it compresses the resolution.
Ms. Harris, do the super districts change at all based on this?
Not based on this, but I do have some super district proposals. I got a couple of.
Okay, I just was wondering, so thank you.
No, this wouldn't affect that right now. Can I get some water? Thank you. Again, trying to bring communities together. Here, as you see, we're trying to create something here, trying to keep as much of what would be considered a popular corridor together as much as possible, and still maintain a population balance. We did make some changes up here where we kept what's currently the District 1, I believe, around the Logan's District, on this side of the expressway and not snaked all the way out to Cordova. And then, of course, tried to put Cordova together. And then you had, what is a southeast district. If you refer back to the map I showed a minute ago, it consolidated Whitehaven all together, which would have placed these two council people in the same district. So here I basically pulled it back out and basically kept District 3 as its own individual district and took it southeast. Population deviation of 5%, so you can do this and have legal population numbers. Again, I think the current map is about 8%. So you know, consolidating some areas and keeping communities together, you can do that and meet those standards. Disregard these numbers because I was doing a lot of work and I was putting together a lot of data and information. So this single plan 5, I know I skipped from 2 to 5. That's because I had a lot of stuff going on. So single 5 is probably as close to the current map. Well, it's more similar to the map than the other two that I just showed, and these are all single member district maps. As you can see, again, we still keep District 3 separate from District 6 here. Biggest change is probably here in the central city where Swan Washington's or District 4 is going south just a little bit, again, to pick up population. And we do still have a sort of a central District 5. And I think the only difference between what I've done here and the current city council map is I think I brought more of Midtown into the district. Again, trying to keep as many of the communities together as possible. Yes, sir.
Yes. In this map, do you have Central Gardens and Cooper Young in 5?
I believe I do. And I need to blow this up.
As opposed to having Cooper Young completely out and Central Gardens split in half.
Yeah, I think Cooper Young is in 4 now under the current
It
map,
is, and half of Central Gardens is.
Yeah, so here I think that's not in there. I think that this is, and I have to blow this up. I truly believe that it is not, looking at this precinct. One of the problems that we have, and I'm sure Attorney Wade had the same problem in the mapping, is the weird way our precincts are structured. And the fact that we, one, changed the nomenclature a couple of years ago at the state to the local election commission, and also the size and the shape really makes it extremely difficult to draw these maps in a way that would actually look appealing because the shape's all over the place. And you got a couple of precincts that kind of look kind of funny. And in one of the maps, I will say this, I was able to, so there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can do it through precincts, you can do it through census tracts, and you do it through blocks. And in this case, I tried to stick with precincts as much as possible, but I think in one of these maps, if not this one, I did have to split a block and bring some blocks in to pull something out, and that may be why that Cooper Young district is now in 5. But I do believe that this district, this precinct here is 13-7, and I think 13-7 is, I believe that's the precinct, that church on McLean and, what is that, McLean, near the Walgreens, Central Church.
Okay, then that if it's
that's in District 5 now. I think in this map it's in District 5. In the current map, it's in District 4.
Yeah, I guess that you know what we're looking at. I sort of like the idea of how do we make a district with downtown? How do we make a district with Whitehaven? And I'm looking at how do you make a midtown district that's not divided in half? And so. That's why I was asking. I was trying to think that the more neighborhood districts that you have, the more that makes sense to the average voter, I think. And
that's exactly what I'm attempting to do here, Dr. Warren, is try to put as many communities together as possible within the limits of having a population that will meet our one-man, one-vote standard without having a deviation that's all over the place. So in all of the maps that I've shown thus far, that's what I'm attempting to do. Now, that can look radically different than what we have today, and that's no knock on anybody because we've lost population, some things have changed. And then each individual person that does redistricting has their own philosophy. My philosophy just tends to be keep as many communities together as possible, as legally possible, barring having single-member districts. Okay. All right. Any questions so far? I'm going to stop. I know I've been just going on and rambling on and yakking on. Okay. And, of course, that map that I just showed has a population deviation of 8%. Again, still meets the legal standard. I think it's right at the number that the current map is. That's why I said it's sort of as close to the current map as you have today, with a few variations. All right. There was a question about super districts. So
Question?
Yes, ma'am.
Back to your Plan 5. May I see the map, right? What's, I guess, throwing me off a little too is your color variations, that purple and violet, I guess.
I know.
Real hard, that's what's saying, where is this?
Yeah,
Right.
these are presentation only.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
it may be later
won't
if
look
you
like this
do
in the
it,
end.
change the
Yeah,
colors
no,
for
the
one
colors,
thing.
the colors will not look like this in the end. This is for presentation.
This is what it actually looks like.
Okay, it looks better.
It's just a screen, the lighting.
Okay, I got you. Now, with this particular possibility, is it any way for you to tell us how many people would be relocated to a different district?
So the crosswalk, I haven't completed on all of these yet. I've got some of that information. I didn't have time to complete it before I got here. It takes a lot of time to do this stuff. But I will, that's one of the reasons I want to have a working meeting this weekend so we can have, because right now the structure that we have, we only have an hour and a half to meet so that we don't violate the Sunshine Law. It's just not enough time for us to get together and kind of hash stuff out. So we're going to have a working meeting hopefully this weekend, and I'm going to be doing some crosswalks. I can tell you this much just by looking at it, that there's probably, for the current city council map for 3, I think the only difference is where you see this district, where you see here where Edmund Ford Senior, where his dot is over to the east side of that. There's a precinct here, and I believe that precinct is actually in District 6 now, okay? And this current precinct right here, that where District 4 is coming down south here, that is not in District 4 now. I believe that's in District 3 now. So there's some shifting here and there. And I think as Dr. Warren mentioned, here in Midtown, I believe that 1307 precinct here was in District 4, and now it's in, it would be in District 5. And there's a few variations over here on the southeast side. There's probably not a whole lot of change. There was just really some shifting around in an attempt to try to bring communities close together. And I want to add, because Midtown is in the middle of the city, if you take just a full north-south view in drawing this district, it would end up, and I've got a map that does that, that I'll show at some point, but I'm sure folks won't like it, but because it's in the middle of the city, it ends up splitting up. So there's some movement around the precincts to be able to keep as much of Midtown together as possible. So again, there's trade-offs with each variation, with each iteration of the maps, but I tried to not be as dramatic in this map as I was, say, in the first one, which was pretty rapid.
Okay, right there, I guess that's 4 that looks white here, but I think looking at, it's a little sky blue.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm looking at the map here. That's the lighter section, looks like District 4. Is that what you're proposing?
Uh-oh, I'm sorry, I did something. Hold on, y'all.
Yeah, it's.
Okay, say it again.
Is that District 4 that I'm looking at?
This light blue section here.
Right, okay.
Is District 4.
Okay.
So District 4 now takes less of what was I guess I want to say, Southwest Midtown precinct here, and that's in 5, and it's going further south. So instead of going up north into Midtown, it's going south into a piece of, like, by the airport, and what would be considered, I believe, the okay area.
Madam Chair, one quick question.
Yes.
Mr. Harris, as you did this, I know you did it with the idea that you didn't want to displace council members out of their districts. Is that correct? Because you were like looking and trying to make sure you didn't put 2 council members running against each other?
So let me ask you that.
Because I have a feeling we're not going to vote for that. because that's not going to happen. So I wouldn't recommend you doing it. But my question is there a reason that you kept people who are not going to be able to run up there? And did that make any decision, as you were doing this, did that change how you did it based on people like Mr. Jones and, Ms. Robinson? They're not running. So as you're looking at this map, that's superfluous as far as the vote's going to be coming up, I think. So I'm just wondering.
No. In fact, like I said, legally, we don't have to take that into consideration at all. We can just draw the map. However, I did want to show members what would happen, where they would be on this map. If
That makes sense. So you wanted to just let them see where they were.
Just want to let you see.
Did it make any difference in how you drew it?
Yeah, because I knew that question would come up. Folks were going to know where, okay, I see this funny map. It looks a lot different than the map I had. Where am I? Or do I exist?
Excuse me, I have a question, Mr. Harris. Can you now bring back up our 22 map? I was just trying to see, to me, it seems like Section 4 geographically has changed significantly. And that's why I'm trying to be able to put the two together to see. Look like you went up into 5 and on this other map,
So if you look at, and I'm just going to try to do this, I'm eyeballing this. Here's a portion here that's now in 5, I believe, that was in what is 4 now, okay? Up in here, I believe. And so all I did was shift that and put more Midtown together here. In fact, there's not a ton of difference between 5 now and that map, other than a few precincts. I want to say maybe 4. It might be 3, maybe fewer than that. I have to go back and look. So there was just some shifting here. And what we did was we took 4 south here, and we took 5 south. That kept more Midtown together. Yes, it did put 4 further down south, but it put them in an area that's what would be considered not sort of a central, following the expressway area sort of corridor. So here you have what we call the Poplar corridor. And here, if you just for conversation's sake, this would be like, say, the Airways corridor, for lack of a better phrase. So all we did was just try to consolidate communities and try to bring them closer together. Now, because some of the way the shapes of these precincts, and again, looking at spatial data can be really, really misleading, so I want to say that again and reiterate that. But depending on the amount of people that are in these precincts, there's some shifting and some alternative moves that have to be made to make this work in terms of the population numbers, so that your deviation is not all out of whack. But generally speaking, there's not a whole lot of difference, with the exception of maybe a few precincts along the lines. 5 came a little south, 4 came a little south. So it's just another look. And even 2 is sort of the way it was. It's just a few differences. I think a precinct here and maybe a precinct there, perhaps. But again, I tried to say, okay, if I were to stay as close to this map and then move some stuff around and try to bring communities closer together and not split them, what would that look like? My approach is a north-south approach and keeping communities together. I'm not thinking about all the other factors, political and otherwise. What does it look like? So, I've got a lot of iterations that I worked on, and these were the ones that actually came out with deviations that would pass muster, for lack of a better phrase.
Hold still, I'm still looking, please, just in case.
Mr. Harris, all of these are political.
All of these are what?
This, by definition, is political.
Oh, yeah.
You can't not be thinking political.
Well, my concern is this too. I know there's a lot of different ways to get it done, but I don't want it to go to an extreme. And the reason being, ultimately, it's the voters that will be affected by it. I don't want to confuse them in the process. People have been accustomed to going to certain areas, to certain precincts. We come election day, nobody knows where to go to for the first election. Everybody throws their hands up and gives up on the process. I know people will say, well, we're going to educate. We're going to send out notices. So help me. Nobody pays attention until the event occurs. So I kind of like it similar on this, so they're not a big major change. And I don't want our voters to be affected so much by it. You know, that's a concern I have in this process. Thank you, Mr. Harris. I think there are some good options here.
Okay. Again, when we talk about good redistricting practices, obviously number one is legal. You want the districts to be compact and contiguous, and we'll talk about that when we get to the end of this. You want to keep what's considered community of interest together as much as possible. That can be difficult depending on, because I said people don't live in chunks of 90,443. Political divisions can be taken in consideration, but they're not the top thing. Obviously, precincts and also representatives. One of the reasons why I put the representatives there is, you know, if we can keep the community together and we don't make major political shifts, then that will lessen the opportunity to have confusion on the side of the voter. I think the toughest part in this is, and we went through this over at the county, this body has no jurisdiction over precincts, and the precincts have kind of always been kind of the stickler here because that's a state and an election commission issue. We have many fewer precincts than we used to have, and so that's consolidated a lot of them, made them larger, and it's moved them further away from some neighborhoods. So in knowing that, and knowing that I'm not violating anything by trying to keep communities together, you know, I'm attempting to try to bring as many of these people together as I can without utter confusion. There will be some changes, but, you know, most of them along the margin. And I think, for example, not splitting up portions of Midtown and taking another district south, it created another corridor, what I'm calling the Airways Corridor, but it also kept and brought Midtown back together. Now, it might create some confusion in the beginning, but I think over time, because of that change, I think most of the voters would actually be happy about that confusion. They'll be happy confusion.
Dr. Warren.
I think the point Councilwoman Johnson was talking about that made sense was the point she was saying was how many people actually switch districts. And so I'm used to voting in 5. Now I'm going to be voting in 3, or I'm used to voting in 4. I'm going to be voting in 6. So the question you've got is how many people actually have to have a new district and may be confused by that. And I think that's an important number for us to have as we look at this.
Yeah, we'll have that in the end. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Chair.
Go on to the super districts.
Mr. Harris, Dr. Harris, we have another question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You may proceed.
Thank you. And I know I missed the last meeting, so I don't know if this was covered, but Mr. Day, I was wondering if you keep mentioning trying to keep communities together. So in our current maps, are there specific areas that you've identified, in your opinion, where communities of interest are not currently together? I think that would help me try to see where there might be a priority for readjustments. So you mentioned Midtown for a little bit, but I'm just wondering if you have gone through some process like that where you've identified priorities.
So I'm pretty much a straight shooter, so I'm going to just kind of give it to you straight. What's considered the Cordova area has always been sort of controversial. We had the same issue with the commission, with the county commission. About maybe 12 years ago, I worked as an advisor.
Can you speak more?
Okay.
Excuse me.
You can't hear me, I'm sorry.
Hard up here.
I'll try to give it to you straight. So with the county commission maps, one area that's always been an area of concern is what's considered the Cordova area. And working as an advisor about 12 years ago, I submitted a plan that would have actually consolidated. There wasn't necessarily political will at the time to change that. This time around, because of just massive population shifts, we had to end up consolidating that area and creating a district in that area. If you notice on a couple of the maps, I'm seeking to, so to answer your question specifically, I'm seeking to keep this area up here, the northeast section of the city, or what was considered Cordova. together as much as possible. I think you can do that. We did that with the county with some changes, because currently District 1 is stretching from, the northern part of Raleigh all the way out to the tip of the city line. And if you look at some of the proposals that I've shown thus far, including this one is not going out as far, but the other proposals didn't go out in that area at all and tried to consolidate that area so that it would have its own district. That has been an area that has been not necessarily has been put together, for lack of a better phrase, or compact over the years for whatever reason. I'm not suggesting anything nefarious or bad or even political for that matter, but that's one area that has not necessarily been put together and has had the population to support a district on its own. But we have historically in redistricting this town, at least I haven't, but no knock on anybody else for whatever decision they made, we haven't done enough to try to consolidate what's considered Cordova. So I think two of the proposals I put up kept them in one block as much as possible and tried to make them compact. Obviously that area has grown a lot. And I've always wondered about the wisdom of stretching that area from the tip of Cordova all the way down to the most southern, southeastern part of the Memphis line. So I hope that answers your question.
Mr. Moore, you may speak.
I understand everybody want to keep communities together, and you want to stay in your old district. But when it comes to redistricting, that's not always necessary. Right now, 2 years ago in the county commission, I was in District 10. I'm not in District 10 anymore. House district. I was in Barbara Cooper's house district. I'm not in that house district anymore. When it comes to redistricting, some people are going to be changed out of district. We do not need to make a wholesale effort to shuffle people around like it's cards. But there are going to be some moves, and people are not going to be in the districts that they are accustomed to. That's just a part of the redistricting process.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Mr. Rossett? Okay, thank you. You make a question from Councilwoman Robinson that Elias is going to read.
Councilwoman Robinson asked, why didn't you keep Whitehaven together 38116?
So there, as you could see, there were two proposals that did consolidate Whitehaven into one district. This is just another, let me see, let me go back. Let's go back, single district plan. That one consolidated Whitehaven. This one consolidated Whitehaven for the most part. So there were, look, we're gonna put several alternatives on the table, and it's gonna be up to the council to decide what the final map is gonna look like. I certainly will put things on the table that people will like. I certainly will put things on the table that people will dislike, but it's gonna be up to the council to make that decision. So I can create some more maps that keeps Whitehaven together. That can be done. Not an issue with me. So I've only done 3 that I'm presenting today, but I've worked on some others that I wanted to make sure I got the population deviation before I presented them in line. But nothing precludes us from keeping Whitehaven together. Nothing stops us from changing the map radically if that's what the body wants to do. What I tried to do was, look at it from an objective standpoint, go north to south, keep as many communities together, knowing that, as Mr. Moore said, that some people, districts may have to change some, but so I'm going from radical to I guess, sort of status quo in my presentations. So this one is the first super district map. The super district proposals will probably be similar to what we have now with some adjustments. I know there was a concern about the consent decree. I don't think that that was clarified in the meeting, what that is from a layman's standpoint. Going back to when that was going on, I was kind of around. I think it mainly deals with the super districts. And what we had before was 6 at-large districts. The super districts, I believe, came to be the compromise plan that the council came up with and the judge approved. But just because they were approved, it doesn't mean that they have to stay the same. So in these two proposals, and super districts are going to be a little bit more difficult to show the difference because they're so big, but we have made some changes here. So we do know that demographically, and I think I alluded to this in one of the meetings, but I wanted to try to stay away from really racially charged discussions as we went through this process and sort of just kind of let the numbers kind of lead the way. But there has been some shifting in the demographics within the city of Memphis, and the super districts sort of reflect that, again, without radical changes. There's only so much you can do to change these things without it being a big radical change. I can do that if I'm asked to do that and put a radical proposal together, but I didn't want to do anything that was going to just create a lot of chaos since we have a short amount of time. So this is one proposal.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Is there a reason that you had to change or wanted to change the super districts, other than just to show what possibilities you possibly had? As you went through this, was there a neighborhood deal or a population deal that made you feel that we needed to change these?
Well, I did think we needed to leave as much, again, try to keep as many of these neighborhoods together as possible without splitting those up. I believe and I don't know if I've got a current super district map on my PowerPoint, but I believe that Super District 9 splits up into the Raleigh area. And what I attempted here to do was, that didn't really make a lot of sense if you could not do that and keep your population deviations in check. So I believe the current Super District map sort of goes up this way, up to the northernmost part of.
Yeah, I think the way that works is Raleigh is in Super District 9, and that area south on Winchester is in Super District 8. So what you've done is switch those two.
Yes.
I don't see how that's changing other than just changing two neighborhoods in it. But I think that's the main change.
Well, this will keep more of, so obviously whenever you change one thing, it changes something else because of the numbers. But this actually keeps more neighborhoods together than not, for lack of a better phrase. So on one hand, a part of the southeast part is now in 8 or in 9 and in 8 that didn't used to be, but more of the northern part of the city is consolidated and kept together and not split up. And the stats on this one, pretty good. I think the current super district map has a population variance of about 4%. So we got it below 1% here. Plan 3. So this is a super district plan 3, sort of a different look. This is a little bit closer to what we have now, but not exactly the same. Again, in the previous map, that Raleigh area was in 8, in the one I just showed you. And in this one, that Raleigh area now is in 9. So it's just an alternative view. And then that southeast part, more that's in 8. Just a different look. How does it look if we shift it around? Because we're required to sort of split the city up in half in population, there won't be a lot of radical differences in the numbers. There will be some number, that would change, but they wouldn't necessarily be radical because the majority of what's Super District 9 on the eastern side doesn't change. The vast majority of the population in both of these maps on the Super 9 side that are east are basically the same. Now, whenever you change something, obviously some other things change in terms of population and or demographics, and I'm going to deal with one more thing that we talked about in just a second. And on this proposal, the population deviation was below 1% as well. So both of these proposals have a lower population deviation than the current city council super district map.
Ms. Harris, do you have the current breakout of the current super districts? Like you have the changes here where you're giving the current variance?
I may and may not have included that. Let me go back, Dr. Warren, let me see. One of the things I didn't want to do, one of the reasons why I did it this way, I tried not to be swayed by what we had currently, and I would only deviate from that standpoint if I was creating a problem with deviations, or honestly, if I was districting somebody out of their district, because I thought that question would come up. And I can defend that if we had maps to do that, but those were kind of the way I approach this, north to south, keep the community together, keeping the population deviation as low as possible.
I think the council is going to want to see, like, I think this is great, showing population variances and how each one of these changes. It'd be nice to see this same format with the population in the current districts that we have. And so we'll have a comparison and be able to look. I think that will be helpful too.
Once we complete all the proposals, and I think we're going to try to submit 5, we'll do a crosswalk and have that information on there. And let me also just, housekeeping issue. Some of these numbers, because of rounding, may just be off a little bit. Again, people don't live in population of 90,000 folks, so it may be off by 1 or 2 persons in this, but you're talking about 600,000 people. It's not going to affect the overall district at all. I just wanted to say that because there's some rounding going on here. Rounding. All right, we're just about at the end of this. And this is some of my homework I have not given my subcommittee that they've asked for. And I'm going to obviously turned it in today because I sent this PowerPoint. This is sort of a map evaluation form. We don't have to necessarily use this, some kind of rubric, so that you get as much of the subjectivity out of the decision making as possible. This is something I used when doing the redistricting with the county. And I'll start from the bottom up. The last section says other concerns. So if you just don't like me and you just say, I don't like him, you can take off 5 points. It doesn't really matter. But as you can see, it's scaled and it's weighted such that anecdotal subjects, personalities, and even politics can have its place there. It can speak in that negative 5 points. But that's not the whole purpose of this. So I'll move up to number 1 now. Our district lines are appropriately proportioned with the population deviation of less than 10%. That the highest possible score is 10, the lowest possible score is 5. If it in fact, and everything we're doing, this is a no-brainer, but I just put it on there anyway. But in fact, if the population deviation meets the standard, then whether somebody dislikes it or not, the lowest possible score they can give it is a 5 because it meets the legal standard. That's why I've had it scaled this way. Does the district structure seek to protect minority representation? That's a legal issue, and I'll let Janika and I'll let your counsel deal with that. I'm not a lawyer, I don't play one on television, but the fact that we're trying to bring communities together as much as possible and keeping population deviations low should in itself protect minority representation, but that's not always the case. So there's probably some other discussions that need to be had by this body and others. But in the process that we have now, and if you want to score this, it could be in the eye of the beholder. So everybody's got their score sheet. Our lines primarily compact and contiguous. And let me deal with that contiguous in this thing. This would be considered non-contiguous, but there's nothing we can do about that. This is not contiguous. But that big hole there is the de-annexation, so we can't do anything about that. So generally speaking, everything else, for the most part, you don't see holes in the middle of any other districts in anything that's been presented. As much as possible, compactness can be in the eye of the beholder because of shape. Somebody might not like the shape. But again, if it meets the standard, if the population deviation is low and the statistics look fine, then it should be okay. Again, it's up to whoever wants to score whatever they want to score. Do district lines respect communities of interest? Again, this is just another, not necessarily a legal requirement, but just good redistricting principles and practices, trying to keep communities of interest together. Do district lines mostly respect political boundaries? That can be a whole big to-do. I won't go into that a lot, but it's not a legal consideration. But are we trying to, let me give an example. One of the maps that was presented over at the county ended up putting two commissioners in the same district. You can kind of figure out how that went. So folks weren't happy about that, but unfortunately, those people live like a mile apart, and honestly, they probably should have been in the same district. However, that was a decision by the commission to not accept that map, and just like this body can decide to not accept any one of these maps that we send, that'll be a decision for the council. And then again, that last concern, if you just don't like it, you can take points off. But just not liking is not enough to take 10 points off of it. So again, this is just one way. We talked about maybe adding some other criteria to this. We want to make it fair and transparent, but we also want to make it make sense. And so there's a level of objectivity that's being exercised here, as opposed to a lot of subjectivity and a lot of anecdotal thinking. You know, I'm driven by the data and the numbers as much as I can. So this is just a guide. And these are those, I think somebody asked about public site tools. There's some sites where people from the public wanted to try their hand at redistricting. They can. I think right now we don't have enough time. We did give, the group did meet and say, hey, we're going to let the public, they're going to have until the 17th to submit their maps. But I'm sure that the GIS people won't be able to handle 25, 30, 100 maps coming through there. If everybody decides that they want to make themselves a redistricting guru in a week. So, but the information will be there. All right, I'm going to shut up. I've talked enough. Do we have any questions? Any further questions?
Any questions? Well, let me you have a question?
Yeah,
Dr. Warren?
I just got a text. I guess it's from people looking at this, and they're concerned that the super district map that you showed takes Valentine, Evergreen, and Central Gardens out of Super 9. And so I'm just thinking that, you know, as you're looking at your things here about respecting political boundaries and keeping neighborhoods together, I was wondering how that came about, that we have both of those taken out of 9.
So let me say about that. So I think the purpose of the super district was to split the city in half. And let's just do a little geography here. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize. I'm not a real loud talker anyway. Let's just do a little geography here while we have the map there. Okay, so if in fact the purpose of having roughly half the city in one district and half the city in the other one, you could legally do that without even going into Midtown at all. Okay, so as much as I could to try to respect those political boundaries and keep a community together, it's extremely difficult because of the population from here to here to do that. So there has to be a cutoff point. Now, yes, you could probably put more of that in there, but that's going to change these numbers, and something else is going to have to move around. But to be honest, there's enough population really on this side of the, on this side of the world to not even have to go into Midtown, which would cut off these areas. So again, I get it. Everybody kind of wants to keep their neighborhood together, but Cordova and Evergreen are pretty long, they're pretty far away from one another.
But they are on the Poplar corridor.
They are now.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying, but I could take that map and probably do a few things, and just the same way you're looking and say, well, why break up this neighborhood that's been in District 8 for the past 20 years and move them into District 9 just to sort of take Central Gardens and Vecca out of 9. So, it's sort of like, as you look at it, you can see it's an exchange, but I'm not sure that you're going to get votes that want to do that. So it's good to see all these options, and I appreciate you doing it. So we'll have to see what council decides and what this committee recommends as you move forward.
Yeah.
And thanks for this work. This was great.
Yeah, if you just split this half of the city, what would end up happening is, and there's also, I've got that consent decree in the back of my head. I want to make sure that we don't upset the demographic balance at all, because that comes into play as well. You'd end up with a pretty skewed racial balance that folks may or may not like as well. So you got to, and put us in some kind of legal issue. So. But
that's assuming we change it, because right now it's within the consent decree where it is, so it doesn't have to change. Correct? The boundary's been in the consent decree the way it is, so changing it just for changing it doesn't make that much sense either. So that's my point, is that if we're in consent decree on the super districts, why change it just to change it? So I know we want to look at things, but my thinking is, why? If, we're already going to change some people, I think as my colleague here mentioned, some people are going to have their districts changed as we move these around anyway. If you don't have to change super district, that's one less change people have to worry about.
Dr. Harris, before you continue, we have a councilwoman that would like to call in and speak to you. So hold on and see, can we make this work?
Okay.
Jonathan, are you ready? Councilwoman Robinson, you may speak. They say you are muted.
Thank you. I am not muted now.
You're right. We can hear you.
You hear me? Thank you. I had several concerns as I looked at the map. I had the greatest growth in District 3. Then I end up third on the list that he showed with the number of population in the district, and that didn't make any sense to me. It's like District 3 is being punished, but to take more people out of the Whitehaven area and not, so we think it's important to keep Cordova together. We think it's important to keep Whitehaven together. So can you give me some explanation around that?
I don't think I heard everything she said. Can somebody, I think I heard part of it, but not everything.
You
question was, go ahead, sir, Madam Chair.
No, Dr. Warren.
Yeah, the question was, why try to put Cordova together in a different way and take Whitehaven apart when, it should be put together more? So why are you doing that as opposed to putting Whitehaven together? I think I paraphrased that correctly.
Okay. One of the proposals that I showed here, and these are just a few of many of the scenarios you can present. In one of them, I did keep Whitehaven together, but let's just look at the current city council map. So under the current city council map, Whitehaven is split also. So in one of the scenarios that I presented, all of what's considered Whitehaven proper is together. Not in all of the scenarios that I showed, but in one of them, and I'll go back to that one. Let me go back to that one. I think it was this one. So as you can see, in this one, all of Whitehaven is together. So yes, that can be done, and in this map it was done, but currently Whitehaven is split right now between this area and I guess this area here, over before you get to the airport. So I did present a scenario to put Whitehaven together.
Right.
completely.
Look at map 5. I think it was together on map 5, pretty much so.
So on map 5, there's just a portion or sliver of Whitehaven that is not in the same district. Excuse me. So there are two ways you can do this, I believe. You can put all of Whitehaven in District 3, if we're using today's lingo in the way that the districts are structured now. Or you can put all of District 6 in together and call it a Whitehaven district. So there are, I guess, several ways you can do this. Obviously, whichever way you decide, it's going to change some other things around the map, which is fine and appropriate. And if that's something that Councilwoman wants to see, I'll be more than happy to do a consolidated District 3 with just Whitehaven and see what that looks like. We're certainly not through. I'm not finished. This is just the stuff that I could bring to the meeting today. I've been working on this frantically to be able to have something to present. So this is just the first stab at it. I've got more work to do, and I've got some other concept maps that I've been working on that were not completed or didn't have a population deviation that would meet the standard just yet to present. So that's certainly something that can be looked at.
Okay. Councilwoman Robinson, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And please create a map so that we can see what it would look like if we kept Whitehaven together. Thank you.
Got that, Dr. Harris? Can you work on that for her, please?
So I think, let me go back. Let me make this clear. Single Plan 1 keeps Whitehaven together, but it's in a different district. This would be called District 5, because under this map, everything changed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in this map, I think there was a question about Cordova. We tried to consolidate Cordova, but also consolidated Whitehaven. So this is radically different than what we have today. Now, alternatively, we can go left, so to speak, and make what was historically District 3 a Whitehaven district, I guess. But this, in fact, consolidates Whitehaven. All of this is, in fact, Whitehaven. This is Elvis Presley. I think this is County Line down here. This is Rains. This is where I think Councilwoman Robinson lives.
Excuse me, I can't see the map.
She can't see it? Can you see it now, Councilwoman?
No, I can't.
Okay. Maybe we can send you a copy of this one, but the
Now
map.
I can see it.
Oh, now you see it, okay.
So where my cursor is circling here, all of this is, all of this is Whitehaven. Here, where you are here, and where Councilor Ford is here, this is a consolidated Whitehaven district. This would be considered, this is where the line cuts off over at the airport in the Oak Haven area, and this would now be part of what's a reconstituted District 6. This new district, or Whitehaven district, will be District 5 under this scenario. So it is consolidated here with a whole new district number. Again, this is radically different than what we have now. But to answer your question, yes, and here it is.
I'll just point out that that pretty much decimates all of Midtown being anywhere close together in this one, though.
Not necessarily, because I think here, let me see. So I think this was split here. I think this is Midtown here. Let me see what this precinct is. It's hard for me to see.
Midtown's sort of at the top of that right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you go to the top of that map, okay, that's Poplar.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
And then you take Binghamton, and that goes, I guess, into 2. So
Yeah.
Binghamton comes out of that, and currently, I think district, that would be District 5.
Yeah, this would mostly be District 5 with a piece of District 4 in today's structure. Again, as I said before, this is radically different. This is different district numbers. So when people say, well, let's shake it up. This is shaking it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Radically different than what we have now. So it can be done. And whenever you consolidate some communities, you end up having some problems in others. But I tried to keep as much of that center together as possible, because remember when I said earlier, this was what I call a north-south map. I started out with a blank sheet of paper, and I said, what if I started north and just went south? And then I went north and went south. When I get to a point where I've met that 90,000 threshold or more, within that 5 up or down %, I stop and I move on to the next district, which is 3. And I keep going until I run out of people and I have to stop, and then I go to the next district. So this was, if you want to close your eyes and imagine something totally new, here it is. But it's not likely to make many folks happy. So let me just say that.
Okay, we have a couple more questions, please. Ms. Guerrero, you may speak.
Thank you. So, Mr. Harris, thank you for working on these maps, because I think we've been talking about it and starting to look at some examples of what could be is really great. And I think the other thing that looking at these maps is doing for us today is that we're starting to get some gut reactions of what these possibilities could look like, right? From all the way from the most radical changes to the least, right? And so I think what's surfacing is the things that are important to us on this committee. Does Whitehaven need to be put together? Does the Cordova need to be put together? Do we need to seriously, or how seriously do we need to consider how many people are impacted? Those are 3 things I've jotted down that are surfacing. And so one thing that I'm trying to see, and I think it's going to be a discussion for us, how we answer those questions. So you kind of flashed through the rubric that I'd love for us to come back to, because I think some of that can be implemented here. I'm wondering for us to discuss, does the number of people that will be impacted, that their districts will change, if that needs to be, for example, added to the rubric, right? I think that's just a point for discussion. And the other thing, especially thinking about the communications, are these questions that we should be bringing to the community, specific questions, right? Instead of just showing, these are some example maps, but there might be questions that we don't know for sure how we feel, and maybe that's what we bring to the community members in these sessions to say, how many people really want Cordova to be put together? How many people really want Whitehaven to be put together? How many people care about how many people are impacted by this? We might find out that not very many care. Some would rather, or the majority would rather, that we have compact communities, and that's okay if their districts change. But I think that's just gives us another option for, we have those sessions coming up, and I think we can utilize that and find out more there.
Okay, communications, did you pick up those particular items that they mentioned that may be of importance to the community? If you can.
That's me. I'm on communications.
Oh, okay, cool.
But just naming them for us to think about. But
you.
I would, if we could, I would want us to go back to the rubric example, because I think that could really give us something tangible that we can continue to come back to with our discussions.
I have 3 comments that have come in we'd like to present at this time. Liza, will you read the comments so we need to address them? We can.
Thank you, Councilwoman. These are comments that were sent to the councilmaps@memphistn.gov email address. We have 3 for this afternoon. First is from Brittany Thornton. She said, Greetings, I received your correspondence concerning the redistricting committee and wanted to express my discontent with the representation offered by the current super district overlays to single-member districts. It's time for 13 single-member districts in the city of Memphis. As a citizen, I simply do not feel represented by 4 council persons with this current structure. It's mind-blowing that our city council persons have to represent nearly 20,000 more constituents than we do on the county commission. From my inquiries, I am not clear on the process to consider exclusive single-member districts. Can you direct me to the best person within our city government who can help educate me on the process? Thank you in advance for your assistance. The second is from Reverend Clifford Ballinger, 2067 Sheetland Cove, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. Cordova needs a unified district reaching from Highway 64 to the Wolf River. Cordova has never had a full voice on the Memphis City Council. Stop chopping Cordova in half. We need a unified voice. And the last one actually does not have an address on it.
So I can't answer the first question about single member districts, but what I will say is considering people don't live in chunks of 90,443, and whenever we go through this process, everyone wants to keep their neighborhoods together, their stuff the same, their stuff the way it is. And when you do that, you end up not redistricting it. So there's a level of unfairness to many communities when you don't go through the process and you try to keep stuff the same because that's what people want. The easiest way, and I know we can't do this at this point, is to have single members. That's the easiest way to give everybody a little bit of what they want, because now you're bringing, again, even more communities together. Mm-hmm. Barring that, just to do what I'm attempting to do based on what we have now is to try to, as much as we can, bring those communities together without, for lack of a better phrase, bastardizing the map itself and creating a problem with the deviations. So, I mean, that's a longer term. That's not, I'm only giving my own personal opinion at this point, mm-hmm. but a professional opinion also, because you won't have, being someone who's gone through this a couple of times before, what people really want are community districts. And in fact, in order to do that, you have to increase the size of the bodies to be able to do that, to keep as many people together. Okay. But that's another cookie to crack for another day.
I got you. Well, I too want to thank you for the time the committee has put into having these maps available for us to review today. I think you've given us some options, a lot of things to think about. I hate to tell you, stay with it and keep going and bring us a couple more as soon as possible. But again, thank you. Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. Mr. Scott, if I'm correct.
Could you put the super district, the one that was radically different from the current super district?
Which? Oh,
the one with 8 going around.
Actually, are you saying the current city council?
No, the recommendation where, or the
this one? That one?
No, the other one.
Hey, that's not the radical one. The other one.
Okay.
One that takes all the north out.
Yeah, that one. Scott Blankenbeckler, City Mapping. Couple meetings back, there was a question about Hispanic, being able to create a Hispanic majority council district. When you're looking at a super district layout, I would strongly recommend that this type of situation is avoided, because the Hispanic population in the city of Memphis is historically located in 2 general areas on the east side of Memphis. There's the Jackson corridor, which you currently have in 8, and down in the southeast corner of Memphis, the Hickory Hill area. By splitting it up the way you have here, you're going to end up diluting the Hispanic vote. With the current alignment of 8 and 9, you have the greatest possibility of having a Hispanic council member. While by going in this way, you're going to end up splitting the Hispanic vote amongst the two super districts, and that will inevitably dilute their representation.
You mind if I address this?
You may.
So in the county process, we looked at this as well. The fastest growing population in Shelby County was Hispanic population. I actually took a stab at trying to draw a map, a single district map, that would try to connect as much of the Hispanic community as possible. That's going to look really, really funny because of the geographic dispersion. But I did attempt to do that. You are absolutely right about this proposal here, but this is just one of many. Again, this is just for a conversation piece. We've got some more coming, but I do agree and that's something I looked at. But again, because of the geographic dispersion, it made it difficult on the single side. Your best bet is through the super district. So I don't disagree. This is just one option.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Harris. Seeing that there's nothing else to discuss other than the next meeting date will be, for this committee, will be Thursday, March the 16th at the same time, 3:30, upstairs in the committee. We also want to announce the next MAP subcommittee will be this Saturday, March the 11th at 3:30 here.
12:30.
12:30?
Yeah.
12 until 3:30. 12:30, 3:30.
Here in the chambers. Okay? I want to thank all the members for coming out and participating and sharing in this discussion. It's a lot of work yet to be done, but let's all stay steady. And I'm sure we'll have an excellent product once we complete